Welcome, my friends, to the world of HeroQuest, a place unlike any other. And today, we're going to look into the extended old world, where the fate of the Empire hangs in the balance. On a vast battlefield, the valiant Imperial Army faces the brutal onslaught of Chaos, a grotesque horde of orcs, goblins, and twisted warriors. Over 100 miniatures stand ready, their plastic forms poised for war. But victory isn't won through brute force alone. Destiny is dealt from a deck of battle cards, each drawn dictating the ebb and flow of the combat. One moment you command your forces, the next your enemy strikes, seizing the initiative with a flurry of calculated moves. Skulls crash against shields as special dice determine your brutal outcome of each skirmish. The Emperor's hope rests on the Mighty Canon, a weapon of devastating power, yet prone to catastrophic misfires. Against it stands the Ogre Champion of Chaos, a monstrous warrior capable of unleashing a whirlwind of destruction. Only one army can survive. Will you lead your forces to glorious victory or succumb to the encroaching darkness? The battle is about to begin. This is the Fair Weatherman. From the makers of HeroQuest, BattleMasters, the epic game of fantasy battles. Welcome back to the channel. This game is full of 90s nostalgia, another game I played heavily as a child. I'm so happy I get to add this game to my collection of HeroQuest and Advanced HeroQuest, leaving only one game I'd like to add, which is Space Crusade, the sci-fi version of HeroQuest. Released in 1992, BattleMasters is a not-so-miniature war game produced by Milton Bradley in partnership with Games Workshop. While sharing thematic similarities with Warhammer Fantasy Battle, BattleMasters features significantly streamlined gameplay. This title, along with HeroQuest and Space Crusade, represents a collaboration between Milton Bradley and Games Workshop, and was the last of the 3 games designed by Stephen Baker. BattleMasters relies heavily on epic fantasy battles, utilizing the Chaos mantra, extending upon the massive universe of the Empire that go to battle against the forces of Chaos. This is a must-have edition for anyone who loves epic gameplay on a massive scale. So let's get into this. I love the epic game art that's included on the box, showcasing the Empire versus the Chaos Army and the massive depth of all the troops around the castle. This is something that drew me in as a child. I had to have this game. One thing Stephen Baker had mentioned when designing the game was that the game mat was so large he had to go to their manufacturer and put the game in the largest box possible, thus dwarfing the HeroQuest box that came out years before it. The design team at Milton Bradley essentially landed on printing the battle map on a giant twister mat, something their manufacturers already had set up without extending the price of this game, and allowing it to fit inside this epic game box, along with all of the miniatures. To make things easier in this unboxing video, I decided to pre-set up all of the figures so that we can easily go through all the components you receive in this box without you having to watch me attach all the figures to the bases. As you can see, there's a massive amount of figures and content that you receive in this box. Things that will have to be set up before you can start play. There are the instructions that you'd receive upon opening the box on how to go about setting up all of your figures on the bases and applying the stickers to the flags and to the miniatures. You'll also receive a really cool BattleMasters instruction booklet with some pretty cool hand-drawn art explaining how to play this game. BattleMasters is a fun game, fast-paced and breaking down the elements of the things we like most about HeroQuest, which is the action and the destruction of your opponent's forces, something my son really likes. I even got my wife to sit down and play a game the other day with us, and she did say she liked it because it was more simplistic than HeroQuest. There wasn't much thinking involved, just rolling dice and destroying one another's troops. Here you'll see that there are some advanced battle scenarios that you can play as you work through a campaign, and some extended features to level up your champions that end up making it to the end of battle. There wasn't a ton of artwork inside the instruction manual, but there's a lot of really cool hand-drawn art amongst the cards. Something that I got a lot of enjoyment out of as a kid, and I can still appreciate now as an adult. Surprisingly, the copy that I received, the mat was still intact with no tears, and after 30 plus years, it no longer smelled like that vinyl toxic plastic that I remembered as a child. This mat is so large, I can't even show y'all on camera. BattleMasters pits the human empire against the forces of chaos, a mixture of chaos, orc, and goblin units from the Warhammer Fantasy universe. Played on a large hex-gridded mat, 54 inches by 60 inches, this game uses over 100 unpainted miniatures mounted on large bases. I'll set this up and I'll let you see what it looks like in action. We'll leave that there for now. The BattleMasters mat includes a river that can only be crossed at designated fords. Other terrain on the mat has no special rules. At the start of each round, players take turns placing terrain features like hedges, which block movement, ford tiles for river crossings, marshes that are impassable, and ditches, which offer defensive bonuses and penalties to attackers. One player sets the terrain, the other chooses their deployment side. These 4 double-sided game board tokens allow you to change up the game mat every time you play. This does add a little bit of customization on the game mat. Alright, here are the BattleMasters playing cards, along with the Ogre Champion cards, which we'll get to in a minute. Players set up their armies and take turns based on a deck of battle cards. These cards dictate which units can move and attack. And since the deck contains cards for both sides, one player might get several turns in a row. Alright, so the BattleMasters cards are separated into 2 factions. You have your Chaos Army and your Imperial Army cards. So these will essentially be mixed together, but I've separated them just to show you what the cards look like. What's really neat about all these cards is they are hand-drawn, very much a 90s aesthetic. And as you pull these cards, it'll tell you which characters to move in your army. It's a very simplistic way for children to play this game without having to think too hard about what characters they had to move next. The Chaos Army does come with a few more troops than the Imperial Army, so there are a handful more cards. My son and I have played a few games so far, one in which I played the Imperial and he played the Chaos, and vice versa. And I will say that you can beat the other opponent with each faction. You get a few more Chaos Army troops than you do the Imperial, but they aren't as strong as the Imperial Army. So with the right strategic balance, you can win with either side. Here are the Imperial troop cards. Now these, you'll notice, are very familiar to the men-at-arms and mercenaries that we received in the 1990 Frozen Horror expansion, as well as the HeroQuest Adventure Kit that was released in the UK. So modeled very similar to those sculpts. We have our Mighty Imperial Canon. Here's a full troop movement card. I really like these Lord Knights right here. These are awesome. I really love the simplicity of the game mechanic, eliminating the turn-based scenario of most games and making you really think through how you're going to utilize your troops in what position on the game board in order to win. Units move 1 square and then attack. Ranged units can only move or attack. Combat uses special dice like those in HeroQuest, with skulls to attack and shields for defense. Here we have the 6 dice, very reminiscent to the HeroQuest dice, that you'll then roll when battling and defending your troops. 3 points of damage eliminate a unit. Each side has a special unit. The Empire has a powerful but unreliable cannon, while Chaos has a versatile Ogre Champion. The goal is to destroy all enemies on the board before your opponent destroys you. These Ogre Champion cards allow the Chaos Army to utilize their Ogre. You have 3 movement cards and you have 3 attack cards, essentially allowing you to move and attack up to 3 times when the Ogre card is drawn, thus destroying the enemy's troops in battle. the Imperial Army player will receive some cannon tokens. These cannon tokens will determine who you're targeting, and then as you shuffle them and draw them randomly and place them across the tiles, it will randomize if the cannonball will bounce or soar over any troops, causing damage or completely avoiding damage altogether. The strategy is to try to get your cannonball over as many troops and hit your enemy, causing mass destruction in the process. The downside for the Imperial player is that the cannon can misfire and blow up. So there is a risk in using the cannon. Now onto the castle. A large plastic tower provides combat bonuses to units inside and penalties to attackers. Cavalry can't enter the tower, and the Mighty Canon can destroy it. I'm going to attempt to put it together right now on camera. We'll see how it goes. When I first opened this box and attempted to put the castle together, I realized the original owner hadn't quite clipped out all of the sprue pieces, making it really difficult for all the pieces to come together. I remember as a kid this castle seeming very large, but in reality, it's rather small. Putting this thing together really brought back a memory of playing with the Castle Grayskull in my He-Man set. I feel like the plastic and the coloring is almost exact. Alright, so as you can see, this thing is a pain in the butt to put together, and I'm pretty sure I had changed one of the panels out or something. Something's not right. But this is the castle. So the game comes with a slew of tokens. You will receive 3 of these rebel tokens. So if the cannon was to, by chance, destroy the castle, you would then replace it with the rubble. You have very familiar skull tokens, as found in HeroQuest. Not the exact artwork, but something very similar. Optional scenarios and tournament rules add variety, including campaigns where surviving units become elite and gain an extra combat dice. Here we have some unpunched elite tokens that you'd then use during the campaigns to level up the troops that survived the last battle. You also have a handful of tokens that you can then identify your troops with, Imperial and Chaos. Each army in BattleMasters has a set of units, 14 for Chaos and 11 for the Empire. Each unit is represented by several miniatures on a single base, marked with a sticker showing its name and flag. Later expansions introduced a point system for the units. More on that in future videos. We'll start with the Imperial figures first. Alright, the Imperial Army will receive 2 sets of archers, both with their own unique branding and flags. Like I said before, these sculpts are very similar to the men-at-arms sculpts we received in the 90s Frozen Horror, just slightly different pose. Along with the archers, you also receive a set of crossbowmen, 3 sets of men-at-arms. And one thing you'll notice too is that all of these factions come from a different, I guess, part of the realm. I was really hoping that the instruction booklet would go into a bit more lore, and I wonder if there's any of that out there. I would imagine that these troops were maybe called up by the Emperor to join the battle against the forces of Chaos, and that maybe Grumberg had sent these men from their town to help. All of the troops are from different parts of the old world. Reckwald, Altdorf, just adding a bit more to the lore of Warhammer. Here is the Mighty Canon. One thing that you'll notice is that I did have to glue the scepter here of our commander. It was thankfully in the bag when I opened the box. I just had to put a little bit of glue on that thing to save it. But very cool sculpt. Like I said, storage does become a problem. I don't necessarily want to throw all these figures into one giant box and risk them breaking. and making the setup that much more intensive to go digging through and finding all of them, so I will probably house them in separate plastic bags for now. Now on to the Imperial Knights. I do feel like BattleMasters does a good job of allowing some versatility, even though we're seeing repetitive sculpts. And I feel like the stickers of all the flags and the shields really do allow the game to feel like you're getting more out of the same sculpts. Here is another set of Imperial Knights. I have seen people mention online that they have gone about and glued all of the figures on to the bases. And if you have a larger storage system, I think that would be fine. But trying to get everything back in the box with them glued would be really difficult. Here are my favorite figures in this whole box. The Lord Knights. I really like the intricate detail of the lion that sits above their helmets. So one thing I like to do when we play, if they were to take, say, 1 damage, I would then pop off one of these horses. And that way visually on the battlefield, it looks like the troops are taking some damage. As more of these figures get destroyed, you'd then maybe have 1 horse running around on the board until it gets completely outright destroyed. But that's one way that I feel like we can add more visually to what's happening in battle. Now, BattleMasters does have a small community on Reddit. Surprisingly, it's a little bit larger than Advanced HeroQuest. But I have seen a lot of people go about painting and adding grass and such to the bases. Something I feel that a game like this can really benefit from, to just continue to add to the world building and the thematic gameplay. But I do like the idea of more knights in the old world, especially with HeroQuest releasing their own champions of the Guardian Knight. You can imagine maybe that those knights came from this realm and were once mounted soldiers. All right, now let's move on to the Chaos Army. First up, we have 2 bands of warrior orcs. Really cool sculpts. Maybe some of y'all Warhammer fans out there can help explain the different locations that these orcs are from. But I do like seeing these orcs inside of BattleMasters. Something we can continue to build upon in HeroQuest with these epic battles between missions. All right, we also have the addition of some Chaos Warriors. I mean, what's a 90s Games Workshop game without the Chaos mantra? These are from Finmar. These are very traditional Chaos Warrior sculpts. One thing you'll notice is that these stickers, 30 some odd years later, are still falling off like they were within the first week of putting them on. I remember as a kid having to continue to push these flags together and try to hold down these stickers so we wouldn't lose them. But surprisingly, this edition that I purchased has all of them. So I was really thrilled when I found this one online. I really do feel like there's so much more that we can do in our homebrew and utilizing all of these flags and banners, creating more factions and homebrew quests, which is one reason why I picked up BattleMasters. It fits right into the universe and gives us more HeroQuest content that we all love. Here we go, the Champions of Chaos. I think these are my most memorable sculpts from playing as a kid. I love the coloring, the black and purple and gray. I love the cool helmets with the skulls on the top. Very neat to see these again and have them in my collection. Of course, we have the mighty Ogre Champion. Now you'll notice about this sculpt that it's almost identical to the sculpts from the 90s against the Ogre Horde. It appears that they maybe took 2 or 3 of them and kit bashed them together, using the arm from one, the belly from another, anything to save on production costs. I mean, this would be a really awesome figure to paint up. And I really do like the game mechanic of adding this ogre and utilizing him in gameplay slightly different than the other troops. Here are the 2 sets of beastmen that you'll receive for your Chaos Army. One from Bale, one from Flint. I do really like the addition of beastmen, something that I feel like we could easily add into HeroQuest. If I remember right, there was a familiar sculpt in Advanced HeroQuest of these beastmen that was utilized here. These figures bring a unique element to battling forces that we don't typically see. All right, here we have two sets of small but mighty goblin forces. Really cool to see them with shields. What I'll do here in a minute is show you the size comparison between all the figures on one base here. Like I've always said, I really do like the traditional coloring of these figures. Not everyone gets a chance to get in there and is brave enough to paint figures. And so I do feel like this did add quite a bit in the 90s. All right, here we have some Chaos Archers. Something that I don't know if I've talked about, but I've incorporated this figure inside my HeroQuest games by cutting off the bottom piece and putting them on bases. We've received skeleton archers and goblin and orc archers, but we haven't received chaos archers yet. But I have utilized these sculpts as my version of a chaos archer. I really like these figures. All right, last but not least, we have our goblin wolf riders. All right, so these goblin wolf riders are probably my second favorite sculpts in the whole box. As a kid, I just remember really loving the fact that these goblins would ride these wolves into battle. And out of all the sets I was looking at online, this one surprisingly had all the spears. The only thing missing was one of the goblin's legs here had broken off. I mean, this plastic though was 30 plus odd years old. I remember though that these came on sprues and you had to snap them off and put them all together. And what I did do is I did end up gluing these goblins to the wolf riders. They weren't pieces that you could snap in like you can the horseback riders, but I did feel like it would just make it a little bit easier to have them all pre-glued to keep them on the wolves a lot easier. In a 2022 interview, BattleMasters designer Stephen Baker reflected on criticism that the game lacks strategic depth. He says there's more strategy to the game than you realize. He once had a US designer tell him it was just too luck-driven. He then went on to say he played 14 games in a row, swapping sides after each game, and winning all 14. You have to deploy and play to the strengths of your army, and you have to watch what cards have been played. In that 2022 interview with Stephen Baker, he did mention that the expansions were supposed to have a design element of a wizard and another type of either ogre or troll character for the chaos forces, and it's just something that was later shelved. This game never really took off like HeroQuest did in the 90s. But those two elements are going to be very easy for us to homebrew and add back into this game, something that I'm going to try to attempt to do here in future videos. This game is full of nothing but 90s nostalgia for me. I love the artwork, I love the game mechanics, I really love all the figures, something I just had to get my hands back on. I do feel like BattleMasters holds a special place in a lot of our hearts because it went alongside HeroQuest in the 90s. I think it'd be really cool to somehow incorporate BattleMasters into the overall universe of HeroQuest. Maybe breaking up a quest with a giant worldview battle between Chaos and the Empire. I hope that these videos help bring back some of the nostalgia for you and maybe excite you enough to go out and try to find yourself a copy of this game as well. As always, your survival depends on your ability to work together, for no true hero stands alone. Come, let the quest begin.